Okay, and we're live. Welcome
There-
to the BrainDrive Monday morning development update call. We do these every week at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Dave Waring and I handle the operations side here at BrainDrive.
And I'm David Jones, and I handle the development side of the house.
Our mission here at BrainDrive is to make it easy to build, control, and benefit from your own AI system. So that's what we're all about is taking back ownership and control of AI from the big tech companies and owning and controlling and benefiting from that ourselves. So we're going to jump in today with what we always start off with, which is our celebrations and challenges for the week. Anything to update on that front, Dave?
Well, I think challenges, while we were eagerly awaiting to take on new developers, and helping out the project, because that's the ultimate goal right there. Uh, I won't say we were not quite as ready as we wanted to, but the documentation and passing on knowledge was a slight speed bump there, here and there. But at the same time, that was also an opportunity to create a good thing because it allowed us to figure out where new developers would have weak points, strong points, things we're looking for as well, for in the future for growth and expanding. So it really wasn't all bad. It was just, hey, on our own, especially my side, uh, doing a better job, and I have already more videos in mind of what I want to do to try to help people get from I've never done this before or I have a React background to become better acquainted with the BrainDrive foundation and quickly do a plugin. Because I know from the difference, it's like I'm watching them struggle taking 10 hours, and it's like, no, I can teach people to get this done in an hour, and you'll be up and running and smooth. You just have to know the quirks.
Yep. And yeah, the same thing from my side. It's really exciting to have this out in developers' hands so we can start learning. And I think, we'd rather be early than late,
Yep.
with this type of stuff because it gives us the ability to get that feedback and learn, what we need to do to take it forward. And that was, of course, the challenges I don't think we got as far with the plugins that we handed out to multiple developers as we would have liked to. But I still think certainly 100% the right decision to put it out. And like you said, now we have those learnings and we can take those forward into this week.
Yeah, on a
Um,
good note, the installer works though, because we did have one of the developers able to do an installer. Their plugin installed. They just had some quirks after that. And like I said, the other one was hey, I learned what better information I have to provide.
yep.
Not just for one individual or a developer, but even for Katie, because I'm a firm believer that you could vibe code a plugin.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in this call because I
Yep,
think we both believe like we know what we need to do. Like the path is now clear in terms of what we need to do to make this work
yep.
for developers. So that's great. All right. And we'll bring up the roadmap here. And this is our roadmap, which is also on the GitHub. We also post the recordings in our community at community.braindrive.ai, where you'll find this. So we're building towards our V1 release, which is for our Katie Carter persona, and also for our Adam Carter persona to be able to help us build and develop towards this V1 release where, this non-technical person can get up and running on BrainDrive on their own computer and be off to the races with some good use cases. So
Yep.
we're at version 4 right
Yep.
now, or is it version 5?
We're working towards 5 right now.
Working
We
towards 5. So you
Yep.
want to update on where you're at with that?
Let's see. We have the plugin data. We have the page data handled as far as the conversations. They're when a developer is developing a plugin. Let's say for the AI chat, we currently have two plugins that we're playing, or two pages that we're playing with. We're moving over. If the developer, myself, and I did either left it blank, there's no page isolated, or I have a type of conversation going on. That's an AI chat. Now, if I create another AI chat plugin like I did, you will be able to just simply move to that plugin and your conversations will go with you. And so that makes it so that you can have multiple developers handling multiple problems and a user can just pick what they want. But at the same time, we had to isolate by the page because if you were doing a therapy type bot, where you're having a therapy conversation, you don't want that information flooding all over the place. You want it
Right.
isolated to that page. So you are able to now also, as a developer, assign that, hey, conversations that start from a therapy, if that's what page it was, it will stick with the therapy through the entire process and will never filter around so it can be played with or anything of
Yeah,
that
and
nature.
that's building off of one of our hypotheses, which is we want to be able to give people some very clear use cases out of the gate and
Mm.
allow developers to be able to give people very clear use cases out of the gate. Because one of the issues that we see when we talk to especially non-technical people about AI is the fact that they can do anything with it, leads them to be confused about what to actually do with it.
Yep.
So giving them some very clear use cases, and you're talking about, if I'm chatting with my therapy bot or my personal finance
Yep.
bot on that page, I don't need any other conversations and that type of stuff.
Yep.
I just want those conversations associated with that page. And this also allows you to do things like if you have stuff that you want to keep completely private, you can have a page with a private model that you're running on that,
Yep.
and those conversations stay private. And then if there's other conversations which you don't care, or maybe you even want to have public, you could have a page with a model that is sending stuff out to the internet or wherever you
Yep.
want it to go.
Yeah, and today I'll wrap up the session data, which basically allows a page just to save stuff so that if you're working on your desktop and you want to move to your phone, it'll be able to handle that. And whatever you're doing there will instead of just being stuck at a browser level, it'll be able to move between whatever devices you want. And then I'll move into personas and I'll get that wrapped up for this week. And that's the part I'm really excited about because that's when it's like because when we did Brain Drive Concierge, that session or the system prompt and the ability to change it, the ability to change temperature and us easily isolate down to perfection. What we want to do is the same thing users want to do. If they're having a conversation with a bot and they don't want a bunch of creative nonsense involved, they can dial down the temperature really quickly, easily, and then have their own personalities they can call upon easily to move through different chats.
Yeah, and then eventually, as a developer, being able to offer these very unique and custom
Yep.
experiences to other people and people trading these things and all of that. And, I think there's a lot of stuff happening with this in the role-playing space right now with platforms like Character AI, which is great. But I think this can apply, very broadly to, your accountant, your AI
Yep.
accountant, your AI lawyer, your AI therapist, are all basically personas, and you're going to be able to tie that system prompt with that and adjust it and customize it, have eventually specific knowledge bases that are tied to that and everything, which will be really exciting.
Yeah, and RAG and chat with documents, they rely heavily on being able to modify that and dial down based on the kind of data you're working with. Because if you're doing something business, you don't want a ton of fantasy stuff, creeping in there.
Right.
But if you're doing gaming, you do. And that ability to just quickly, easily change it, and you get whatever result you want then.
Yep, and even have it set up on a page so you're all set and you're off
Yep.
to the races, when you go to that page. Really excited for that. All right, great. Anything else on the roadmap that you want to discuss before we
Uh,
move on from that?
nope, nope. We're going pretty good on that one.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let me go back to the Monday agenda. So a big thing last week was getting the plugins, the first couple plugins out to developers.
Yep.
As once we get to the V1 release and we're really pushing this publicly and everything, we're looking to really have a big open source community helping us build on this. Right now, we're sort of bootstrapping that community by bringing in some contractors to work on plugins. The first plugins that we're working on are really to improve the chat experience of BrainDrive, and that was being able to add APIs into BrainDrive, so you can not only use local models via Olama, but you can also use models from Grok and other open
Hmm.
source inference providers, as well as models from the closed source inference providers if you want to. And I think this is another example of we want you to have the freedom to use this system however you want. And that's why we're not religious about local only, right? If
Yep.
you want to use closed source models or you want to use the OpenAI and Anthropic models for certain things, you should be able to do that,
Yep.
right? And there's plenty of use cases where, you don't want to do that. You may not want to do that because you want to keep everything private, but there's plenty of other use cases, where you don't care. And I like to think about this as just like your own person, right? Some
Y-
things you're talking about in publicly, some things you only share with your spouse, some things you don't share
Yeah.
with anybody.
Yep.
And the same thing is true with your AI system, or should be true
Yep.
with your AI system. So we have that was a project we started with asking developers to build just the OpenAI version of that, and then we're going to assign out the additional plugins on that side. And then also on the Olama side, Dave has developed that as an example plugin and also to get the local models up and running on BrainDrive. And he put together a job description for improving and adding
Yep.
functionality to the Olama plugin. So those are the two, plugins that we put out. And I would say, um, you know, it's been a learning experience.
That's how I described it.
Yeah. So the first thing is, anytime you put out projects to contractors,
Mm.
my experience has been there's a lot of flaking that happens,
Yep.
right? People that say that they're going to do it and then they just don't and never show up again, and that's fine, right? You just sort of have to move on quickly from that. And the second thing is you have people who think they can do something, but actually, as they get into the project, they can't do it, and they don't want to say that because they don't want to get a bad review on the
Yep.
platform, which is, of course, completely understandable. And hopefully, if things go well, you get someone that, one or two people that actually are really good and you can continue to give more work
Yep.
to. And they sort of flow in and out. They may get another project and stop working on your stuff and they come back a couple months later. And so you sort of have to, we really believe in this community style of work and you sort of have to build for that. And
Yeah.
that's one of the learning processes that you always have to go through. And I'd say we're going through now. So, lessons from your side that you think we can take away going forward on how we can improve with this? Well, I guess I would just say the last thing I would say is we don't have anyone who actually 100% completed this
Yep.
project.
Yep. Not yet.
And so I'd say we have two developers that have been very
Yep.
communicative in terms of one developer jumped on a call with us and went through everything.
Yep.
Another developer has been very communicative with us over Slack, and they may get there. But beyond that, out of the six developers that we handed this out to, I don't think we have anything beyond
Yeah.
that.
Um, the first hit challenge was, of course, me getting out of my head. I could do this in an hour. But that doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form. So it's not pinning on anybody else. Then comes the responsibility of taking a step back, all the questions that got asked to us, or the speed bumps that I started to see, and that's where I need to take it as a responsibility to not just the videos that I gave. Here's how you answer, whatever question was popping up. Here's how you solve that problem, but also for creating better videos in the future so that we're not waiting for the question. We just have one video, watch this. It's going to go take you through from start to finish of putting a plugin together. And that's, if we learned anything from six developers, were those questions of what somebody who's never seen BrainDrive are going to get hit by and where the speed bumps are going to exist. And that's worth gold because if we can solve that now and our next round, when we go to somebody and say, hey, here's a written documentation, here's a video to go with it, create a plugin. If we can get to that same part where, it's like the install process, we went through that same thing, install it. Okay, I hit these speed bumps. Then we solved all those problems and everybody can install it then. So I believe that's the same thing as we're going to hit here. And the fact that we're using developers off Upwork and such like that, this will allow us to move fast past that really quickly.
Yeah, and I think another great advantage of doing it this way is, if we can get this down to an hour for that developer that's never seen the system
Yep,
before, that's going to be huge, not only in terms of what it allows us to accomplish with the contractors, but also what it allows the users of the system and the BrainDrive owners, of their own AI system to accomplish with BrainDrive Studio as well. So it's kind of like we're killing two birds with one stone. We're working to get more for our money with the contractors that we're
yep,
paying, but we're also improving the process to make it easier for that community developer, that open source developer that wants to customize their BrainDrive platform to be able to do so, right?
yep. I believe we're going to get there. It's hey, if we didn't hit speed bumps, I'd be worried because that
Agreed.
would be like something we missed.
Yeah, um, absolutely. So, another thing, another learning from this is one of the developers provided Figma designs
Yep,
for how they wanted uh, the plugin to, or how they envisioned the
yep,
plugin to look, and it was completely different from what we were envisioning.
yep,
So, I think that's a lesson going forward is in addition to improving the videos and documentation, once a developer accepts the project,
yep,
you and I really getting on the same page about what it is that we want and how it should look, and being
yep.
able to give that to the developer, I think would really help them,
Yes.
zero in on it. Other lessons?
Um, From the developer's side, no, because that's where we're kind of stuck at right now is the amount of information and taking somebody from never developed a plugin for BrainDrive to I can develop it very easily and where do I need to change work like that. And I'm sure once we get past that, we might hit a few more quirks and things like I said. The video I did this morning for the one group of questions was about, hey, understanding that this is not a Vite project that you have to do module federation. Here are some things that you need to watch out for. How to make it easier for yourself. Like when you build a plugin, you can change where your distributor directory is and how to change that just in case you didn't know as a developer,
Yeah.
because they can speed things up for you.
Okay. So the other thing I was thinking about is I don't think, even though they said they were familiar with local AI, my sense is from the types of questions that we were getting
Yeah.
that the developers that we're working with have never really used a local AI system before.
I would go with that also, not just local AI. How about just AI in general?
Yeah.
That because it's some of the things that people were being hit by. I mean, I don't know how anybody else is in the world like that, but I know you from what I'm watching, and I know how I am. I have an AI prompt always open. If I have a silly question, I don't Google anymore because it takes too much time out of my
Right.
day. I just simply hit it with that. It's like, hey, can I change the directory, from React? And it comes back very quickly, gives me the exact answer. And not only do I look smart, but it also took less time than me figuring out any other way.
Right.
Um, and I'm just dumbing that down because it's like you can ask it anything. You can move past problems pretty fast. And it's this was the first time we've dealt with developers like this, and it was pretty easy to spot. You don't mess with AI much. It was amazing. It's like even when I looked at their code, it was like I can tell this isn't even how anybody would do it. So the you did this alone
Right. Right.
in a
Right.
box.
Okay. So that's a lesson.
Yep.
Um,
Like
all
any
right.
job description from now on should put up on top, we're an AI driven company.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just making a few notes here.
Yep.
Any job JD should put up that we are an AI driven company. In terms of like the video and docs, so you're thinking like doing one video with everything in it
Um,
is
I would hope so, but it might get a little long. I'm going to do one video, which I'll call Hello World, because every programmer who's ever done any programming knows Hello World. So I'll do one video that start to finish. And then I'm going to do documents where it'll be broken down, and each breakdown in the outline will have its own video to target on that. So you don't have to watch 45 minutes. You can go, okay, I'm having a caching problem. I can read it. If that doesn't answer it, I have a video to go with it.
yeah, I think we should do one like 5 minute or less video of just like this is what BrainDrive is, a very
Yep.
short version of the longer one we already did. Um, you taught like this is the programming like the libraries, it's a modular system, it runs locally, blah blah blah, right?
Hit the key points.
Yeah. And yeah, and
Yep.
basically then we can have a but because I think people also we need them to be able to watch one before they accept the job, and they're probably not going to
Yep.
watch like a 20-minute video, but if it's 3 to 5 minutes, I think they'll watch it,
Yep.
in
And
terms of
based on
like
the
should I
video I
take
did
this
this
job or
morning,
not?
that is exactly what happened.
Yeah,
They didn't
okay,
watch the
perfect.
20-minute video.
Yeah, right. 3 to 5 minutes. intro video. Okay. Um, all right. And then on that note, I took the videos that you sent. I haven't done the one that you sent this
Mm,
morning. I'll send this to you. So I put it on YouTube, obviously,
yep,
so we could share it. And then I gave AI the GitHub and I said, review and the transcript, and
yep.
I said, create a document for it.
There we go.
So I don't know if this is going to be helpful to you, but and I think there's probably some stuff in here that's needs to be taken out or tweaked, but I
Yep.
figured why not also have a text version of it, you know?
No, and in fact, that would probably be a good starting point, especially if we start from the beginning. Here's 3 to 5 minutes, and then we build a longer video and taking that exact process. And that gives us the starting point of the written documentation.
Yep. And then I put the transcript. I think I put the transcript on there too. Yeah, here's the
Yep.
full transcript of the video, so you can like play with play
Yep.
with the summary and that type of stuff based off of the transcript. So that's the shorter one, and this is the longer one.
I was about to say, one of them videos, they got crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so you have those
Yep.
now. I took the recording from the developer that joined us on the call and did the same thing. I gave
Okay.
it the transcript and asked it, how can we improve our documentation based on your conversation with that developer? So again, no action items necessarily from this, other than maybe this helps you with the documentation part.
Yeah. And new videos to come.
Yep. Okay, so and that's for this week,
Yep.
new videos. Continue, week two. It's really V5 tasks
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. We're working on V5. Yep.
Okay. All right, I have stuff to talk about brain drive memory. Okay. I guess a question would be, do we want to continue on with these same developers or to try and get them across the finish line, or do you think it would be better to start
Well,
afresh?
we have two developers that I think are, we'll call it in progress. We have the one doing the Olama management, and the last I seen from him, he managed to get the tabs correctly, and had the list. No, he changed over to, I believe, the last video we seen, to a text box.
Yeah,
Uh,
and he tried to hit us for 32 hours, even though
oh,
even though the and he brought this up in his
yeah.
defense that he went way over the agreements. And I said, listen, that's on you, you know.
Yeah.
So and he was fine with that. But I think if that took him 32 hours,
Ooh,
I definitely don't think this is someone that we're going to be working with going
yeah,
forward.
yeah, because the
Um,
skill set wasn't there.
So I guess my question, do you think what he has is going to be useful and I should get him to carry it across the finish line or no?
Without seeing the code, I'm going to go with no. I'm just going
Yeah,
to go based on what I've seen and heard.
that's
Pure and
my
simple.
that's my
Yep.
and I think this is an opportunity for us to take the lessons that we've learned and go back out with a new
Yep.
job description and get a new set of developers working through the same process.
Yep.
And what about the gentleman that was on the call with us?
On this call, he's pretty close. I want to see where he gets to because he at least had the idea. He knew enough to have the installer working. So
Yep.
he figured out that on his own. He obviously watched the video because he didn't have any of the questions like other developers had.
Yeah.
And he was able to figure that part out. He was just trying to, it was the part that he missed is the part that I missed to put in a video. And that's where the second video came in because
Right.
I didn't bring up what makes a plugin a setting part. And so we'll have to wait and see what he did with that.
Okay, so we'll continue on with him, but
Yep.
he's the only one that we're continuing with on the plugin development side. And I think the goal for this week is to get the revised job descriptions out
Yep.
with new documentation and get people working on. Uh, I guess
Plugins.
I don't know if we should continue on with the other guy with all of the other plugins, for the API stuff. You think we should just like
Uh,
assume he's going to be our guy or?
I wouldn't assume yet because he hasn't quite got to the finish line yet. So the key thing is like he's demonstrated he can watch a video or listen to what needs to be done, and he has enough React knowledge to know how to apply it. So we'll just have to see,
And I
does he
like
take it?
that because that may be like sort of our base case,
Yep.
Adam Carter, you know
Yep.
what I mean? To be able to do that type of development. Okay. So I say we put out the local Olama updates.
Yep.
If we get someone good that does a good job with that, and the other guy doesn't work out on the API based models, then that person probably is going to learn enough that they can jump over there and do
Yep.
that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If
So last time we went with the least expensive, options that had and I still think that was the right move. Let's
Oh
see
yeah.
what we
Oh no, because
get.
it's a learning process. We don't want to spend $1,000 learn us
Right.
ourselves learning.
Right. Now I think we go the opposite direction. So
With,
now I think we go and see what we can get at the high end.
yep. With
Um,
better documentation, better videos to help point out issues and stuff like that that they'll need to know, and get a serious React developer who's touched Module Federation, and we can see what kind of arrangement that could get us.
yeah, and I think in terms of priorities for this week, I would prefer to have the documentation and not hit point 0.5
Okay.
than vice versa. And
Yep.
my reasoning behind this is we need to get
Yep.
the sooner we can get other developers working on this, the faster we'll move. So
Yep.
if we need to take a step back to take 3 steps forward this week, I would rather do that, especially because we weren't thinking about 4th of July this week.
I'm going to wrap up the code that I started over the weekend. So that way it's not hanging and like that. And then once that wrapped up, which will be today or before lunch probably, I won't touch personas yet. So that'll start fresh when I get done with the documentation and the videos. But I'll
Perfect.
get straight. Yeah. So I'll work on the documentation based on what you sent me today. Get that ironed out. I'll start doing videos to go with each point on the documentation. So we answer all the questions that people have in very one concurrent uh, line of documentation.
Got it. Great. That's perfect. Okay. So that's the big thing for this week. Is yep,
Yep,
may not get it all because of docs.
yep.
And the fourth. Okay. All right. Okay. So we were working on BrainDrive memory,
Yep.
right? And the idea is, the more the AI system you're using gets to know you, the more useful it's going to be.
Hmm.
And, if there's a point of lock-in with AI systems, like this is it.
Yes.
Because once you've used this AI system over and over and over again and it gets to know you, using another system is going to be like starting over and hiring like a new executive assistant after you spent years working with another one. It's not going to be impossible,
Yep.
but it's going to be a huge pain in the butt and you're not going to want to do it.
And Anthropic realized this as well because once OpenAI came out with memory and people started seeing the connection with what they were doing and how it could carry forth to other chats, they turned their corner and they started working on memory and just recently offered their first product in that line.
Right. So, this is for, AI ownership. This is really important.
Yep.
And so we have another developer, Beck, who's been working with us as a contractor, building out, V1 of a memory system. And about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
we came out with a hosted version of what we call BrainDrive memory. It's in our GitHub repository. And, that uses open source for the embedding model,
Hmm.
which is what puts the information and takes it out of or puts it into the databases. It uses Neo4j for the knowledge graph for GraphRag as a database. It uses Supabase
Yep.
for vector database, I believe. And it's built in a modular format so you can add MCPs into this and you can swap out Neo4j, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So that's all open source, and that's
Yep.
where we feel like the major points of lock-in are, right? The
Yep.
embedding model, if you have to switch that out, it's a huge pain in the butt. So you want to make sure you own and control the embedding model and are using an open source embedding model. The databases, not impossible, but huge point of
Yep.
lock-in. So making sure that we're using those databases. On the actual model side, where you're talking, to your chatbot, if you own all the memory infrastructure, right, then
Yep.
I think you can make the argument that, okay, you can use an OpenAI model for that piece because if they ever do something you don't like or shut you down, that shut down their API or whatever, because you own all the other infrastructure, you just start using an Anthropic model or another open source model or
Yep.
whatever, right? So
Yes.
we actually have that, right?
Yes.
Um,
And it works because we did a video. I don't think did we do a test run or a video of
we
it,
did
but
a
that
test.
worked.
It
And
it works. So, I had a set of questions,
yep.
that I would give all of them, and we got it to the point where for the first time it answered all the questions
Yep.
correctly. But it wasn't like a million questions, so it needs to be played with. But the cool thing is it not only, automatically extracts memories from the conversation and automatically pulls context in from your various databases to supplement the conversation with your system's memory. It also updates, right? So
Yep.
if you say I'm a vegetarian and then 3 weeks later you say, you know what, I decided to start eating meat again, it
Yeah.
it does those types of updates, which is really cool. And I think it's like BrainDrive itself, like the most important thing is it's designed to be built upon and improved upon by the open source community. So it's not meant as like, here's a final product. It's meant as here's a foundation
Yep.
that we can all build upon that we own and control. And so I was actually considering like putting that out there as a
Yeah.
project. I think we both were,
Yeah.
but and sort of promoting that. But the conversation that we had at the time was right now there's really two camps. There's the people that don't know anything about local or care about it, and then there's the local people,
Yep.
right?
There's no
And,
in between either.
and they're religious about it. And as soon as you say, I felt like as soon as we said, well, you're chatting with the OpenAI API, people are like, well, what the hell is this? I
Yep.
thought you guys were like, self-sovereign AI people and blah, 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 right? And so, I said, had this conversation with Beck,
Hmm.
and I said, let's see if we can get it working locally. And the answer is we have not been able to get it to
Yeah.
work locally, not even close.
Not with results that anybody would count on.
Right. And, I don't think this is unique to us that if you want to load up a 1.5 or even an 8B model and do some chatting, et cetera, or maybe fine tune something for a very specific use case, local's great.
Yep.
It's private, you run it, et cetera. But beyond that, as soon as you get to things like RAG and a document chat with your documents, blah, 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 it doesn't work
Yeah.
locally right now, at least not on any sort of, consumer grade hardware, right?
Yep.
That doesn't mean it will never work, right?
Yeah.
Because the models are getting smarter and smaller, and the hardware is improving rapidly,
Yep.
right? So just because it doesn't work now doesn't mean it will never work. But so anyway, just to continue on this story arc. So I said, okay, let's see if we can get chat with doc. Forget about the full memory
Yeah.
system. Let's just see if we can do chat with documents. You upload a document, it extracts the information out of it, it puts it in a database, you can chat with it, right?
Yeah.
Much more basic than what we had before. And the demo that I got from him, it works, but like it takes like 5 minutes to like extract the document, and this
Yep.
is on like, an average consumer grade laptop, of course. And it's throwing error, and it's just like, and granted, he only worked on it for a week, and does not work for us full time. So, you know, I think it can improve, but I just feel the same sinking feeling of like we're going to battle with this thing to get it to work completely locally on the average laptop, and it's never going to be anywhere. Right now, it's
Yeah.
not going to be anywhere close to what we can do in a hosted environment,
And
right?
embedding has been notoriously slow since day one. When you put the document in there, it does take a while for it to go through the document and embed it, and then save it to the database.
Right. And so, this to sort of bring this conversation full circle, you know, originally I was thinking like I think we're really self-hosted people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which could mean locally, it could mean the cloud,
Yep.
right? But what self-hosted means is ownership, control, and freedom to do whatever I want with
Hmm.
it. It doesn't
Yes.
matter to us really where the system lives,
Yep.
right? We want it to be able to live wherever. And also, you can slice and dice this, right? It's not an all or nothing scenario. Just because you're using some cloud hosted components or even some closed source API components doesn't mean the whole system, has to be that way, right? You could run your
Yep.
interface locally and you can use cloud-based inference, providers, a combination of open source and closed source providers, et cetera. So, but like going back to what we were saying, there's no cloud self-hosting movement.
Yeah, there isn't.
There is a local AI movement, right? And we're part of that local AI movement. It's just we're more in the like we also are part of the cloud self-hosting AI
I
movement.
almost think we live in reality because
Yeah.
it's like you and I both. It's like if you, for local to work, 9 times out of 10, you have to be in your one office. You can offer yourself access from the outside world. So like let's say if you went somewhere other than your home and you wanted to access it, but you also run the risk when you do that of being vulnerable to attacks. I mean, you just let somebody catch your IP open, and who knows, you may lose your entire internet on a DDoS attack because some kid decided he was going to aim his script at you that day. You have no, I mean, it's anything can happen at that point. The cloud gives you that ability to, like I said, you and I live in reality. Our laptop can't run a GPU. Most people can't afford the GPU that it takes to run a serious model. I mean, you can run an 8B, sure, but your laptop's not touching above that as a general consumer level. So having something that exists on the cloud where you own it still, it's all yours. You just have this little cloud operating system where it runs and you open router or something else, you can access the GPU and suddenly you are no longer trapped in this office.
And the serious people, even that are building platforms, I'm not going to name any names here, but the serious people that we know that are building local AI platforms run cloud-based services in addition to their
Yep.
local. So I don't think there's anyone that I've talked to that's doing serious stuff with AI that's only local,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, because your GPU cost alone, that's a car.
Right,
Especially if you want to run, like we were talking about, in order to do RAG, you have to do RAG well, you're touching at least a 70B model.
right.
Anything less than that from what even Beck's little chart that he had where he tested different models using the RAG and the memory, and the lower even 32-bit was not, or 32 billion parameter model was not doing the results that he wanted to see. So
Correct.
you're hitting 70 to get consistent results at the very
And
least.
even at that, you're not matching, OpenAI
Oh yeah,
for
you're not even close. Yeah, you're not even close to OpenAI at this point. So it's like you want to touch to me, and you want to be open, and you want to be private. That's Open Router or something of that nature instead of going to a closed source model. That way you can have access to everything. And if things change, and as they change, Open Router evolves, and it does move rapidly when a new model comes out.
And this is the key, what you're saying right now, from my perspective, is avoiding lock-in,
Yep.
right? So it's like, we need a better name, but like no lock-in cloud self-hosting is basically
Yeah.
what we're talking about
Yep.
here. So it's fine to use an OpenAI API for inference, it's not fine to use a closed source OpenAI embedding model because you're locked into the embedding model and you're not locked into the inference provider,
Yep.
right?
And you change that embedding model, you have to redo all the
Right.
documentation, which, as we just said, could take 5 minutes just on one PDF.
Yeah. So, we got to come up with a better marketing slogan for this, but like we want to be part of the no lock-in self-hosting movement,
Yep.
right? Not the local movement, but local can be if you have a $50,000 hardware setup sitting in your
You don't need anybody else.
office, you're local. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're doing everything that we're going to be doing in the cloud, right? Maybe more, right? With
Yeah.
that, right? But if you're the average person that doesn't want to spend $3,000 or more on a piece of hardware, you're going to have to run some components of this in the cloud. But the key is, and this goes back to the WordPress analogy, you can host WordPress locally, but most people don't,
Yep.
especially if you have a big WordPress site, you host it in the cloud. But the reason why you still want to use WordPress instead of a Wix or a Squarespace or a Shopify is because you own and
Own
control
it.
it,
Yep.
right? So so I think this is, where we've been wanting to move. And I think from a marketing standpoint, my thing was like, well, we really need to like go local first because
Yep.
that's where all the movement is. The more that I work on this stuff, the more that I'm like, even, we just need to go all in on cloud self-hosting,
Yeah, because the if you're an Anthropic or you're an OpenAI, I treat that no different than you and I are old enough for that. I don't know if you were in tech back then, but when people used to say what was better, DOS or Unix, that's what that argument has become because
Yeah,
both engines or both AIs are really good. They're top of the lines. You can't do better than them. They're sitting at the top of the food chain. So it's like which one you pick, who cares?
right.
It's when you want to do work that's when it's like, hey, if you're going all local, you are sacrificing.
Right.
No,
And
unless you have 100,000.
self-hosting also helps us get around open source, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of the things people are calling open source are
not.
actually self-hostable, and that's why people like them, but they're
Yeah,
not actually open
yeah,
source,
yeah,
so but if you're talking about a personal AI system, like, do you really care if it's open source if you're running it on your own hardware and have complete control over
yep.
it? So, we're just gonna have to like instead of trying to avoid the nuance, like I think we're gonna have to
And
embrace
be embrace
nuance and be
the
the place that is you have to be able to learn a little bit, not from a tech standpoint, but you have to understand the concepts
yeah,
to get what it is that we're offering and why it's different. But I also think that's a differentiator for us because there's a lot of local AI systems. You know what
yeah.
I mean? Um, so anyway, all right. It sounds like we're on the same page with that.
Yes,
All
yes.
right.
Because like you want to be able to go, go visit your parents, go handle that, and come home and have the same AI experience in both places, which is ideal. That's perfect.
That works, right?
Yep,
Because I have, ngrok set up and, I can use whatever I have on my laptop on my phone, but it gives me the same performance as my laptop, which is not very good.
yeah.
So, all right. So that's an important piece. So I'm gonna put that on my list for this week is to really work on the messaging around
hmm
this. Um, Okay. And I also did some work last week on the ultimate guide to hosting an AI system.
Yep.
So I'll just quickly, oh, that's different. So the thing that this one's a little different from the local one that I did because I'm actually also starting to think through the Katie Carter workflows that we're going to want to be able to offer in BrainDrive
Yep.
to this writer Katie Carter, who's our content creator and marketer. So I really tried to come up with prompts and a system that we're going to be able to offer in BrainDrive to really help people craft the persona that they're. It's almost like it helps you create if you're a developer, like the product request document. It's
Yep.
like the same thing, but a content, request document or content brief, is what it's called. So making good progress with that, and then, so I have local, what we just talked about. Total
Yep.
control, cloud self-hosting, is it the perfect middle ground? Okay, what you're hosting, the four components, the first three, the interface, the database, the plugin and tool layer, it's basically like hosting a website. So it's all about the AI models, in terms of where all the complexity and all the decisions come into play, right? And then so, all of these model hosting options. You can host it locally. You can host it on a VPS. You can host it on a dedicated server. You can host it in a serverless environment. You can use a managed AI inference provider and taking a hybrid approach. So these are kind of the six options, right?
Yep.
And then, here's how to pick quick reference points. There's providers listed up here, cost. And then I'm now just basically using AI to go through each one of these and do like this is how you set it up, right?
Yep.
And so, this is where I think I would have no shot of this without AI, but I actually think I can get a pretty good guide, at least a good starting point on each of these things. And like this is start to finish, what you're going to need to be able to set all these things up, right?
Yep.
Um,
One thing you have on there on the very top, but I think it almost needs to be emboldened because people do not realize this, is the electricity cost of running self-hosted.
yeah,
It is no joke because
yeah,
it's like I have everything in the world here. As far as I have real Dell servers down in the basement because it's nice and cool down there and everything like that. And each server is $30 to $50 in electricity every month.
right. And you're not only bearing the higher cost of the hardware, you're also bearing the cost of the cooling and the electricity and all of that,
Every
which
month.
is just going to be way more efficient in a data center that's designed to do all that.
Yeah, exactly. 'Cause when you look at the inferencing costs of a model going through, like we said, Open Router, where you just pay for the access of the model itself, it's like it takes a lot of work to get $50 in token costs. I
Right,
mean, you really have to be doing a lot of work to do that.
right,
And so it's like, and that's not including even that's just the power, the electricity versus your monthly. Not you have to go buy the actual cards that do that, and that's where it's like, some of these GPU cards are easily 20, $30,000 a pop, and you might need three of them. You
right.
know,
And also on the local side, if you ever want to have that much power, you have to have it all the time and you have to
Yep.
buy it. Where on the cloud self-hosting side, you can rent GPUs when you need them and then not pay
You
for
can
them.
scale when you need to, not all the time. It's like
Yeah,
there's some things. It's like the electricity, because hey, I got a wife, and she looks at the electric bill and says, "How come the electric?" I was, "Oh, I have a server on downstairs, still don't I?"
yeah.
Those
And if
kind of
that
things.
server like sucking that electricity regardless of whether you're using the
Yes. Oh, yeah. They have idle times, of course, which are lower, but at the same time, it's on all the time because
yeah,
that's how servers run.
yeah. So just another, data point,
Yep.
right? All right. So that's for me. Uh, finish out ultimate guide to AI hosting. And I'm learning a lot through this
Yep.
process. And also, we plan on offering a hosting service that gives you, full ownership and control over your AI system. And so that's helping me, think about that and think through that as well. Bu-bu-bu-bum. Okay. I think that's gonna be, let me just go back. I think that's everything for the dev call update. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nope, we have covered everything. And like I said, we have the developer thing. That's where our challenges and our fun stuff is coming last week and cleaning that up this week so we can move forward and bring new people in on the project.
Great. So that'll be awesome. Like I said, we do these calls every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. They're also recorded and posted in our forum over at community.braindrive.ai. We encourage all questions, comments, concerns, objections, etc.
Yeah.
Just hit the reply button there. Leave us a comment on YouTube, and we'll see you next week at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yep. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.